In Halloween history, where ghouls, ghosts, and spooks reign supreme, there exists a tale so terrifying that it forever etched the name Gerald Turner into the darkest annals of infamy. This is the chilling story of the one and only Halloween Killer. The year was 1973, and Halloween night loomed like a shadowy specter over a small town. Pumpkins flickered with eerie candlelight, and children excitedly donned their costumes, eagerly anticipating a night of trick-or-treating. But in the midst of this festive ambience, a sinister plot was unfolding. Gerald Turner, a seemingly ordinary man, had planned to spend Halloween with his girlfriend Arlene Payne, at her mother's house. As the hours ticked away, he claimed to be unwell and incapable of joining her. Little did Arlene know that this was a trick, a mask concealing the true horrors that lay beneath. Around 11 p.m., that Halloween night, Arlene returned home, exhausted from her festivities. Unbeknownst to her, just 4 hours earlier, an unspeakable tragedy had unfolded. Gerald Turner had lured young Lisa and Frenchie, who had innocently knocked on their door in search of Halloween treats, into their home. It was on that very bed that he committed the heinous acts of assault and murder. 3 days after Halloween, in a desolate field, the lifeless body of Lisa was discovered, a grim testament to the horrors of that fateful night. Gerald Turner was swiftly apprehended, and the weight of his crimes was undeniable. In a court of law, Turner was sentenced to 39 years behind bars. The world anticipated his release on February 1st of the preceding year. However, the wounds inflicted by his heinous actions were far from healed. Lisa and Frenchie's grieving family, joined by concerned citizens, relentlessly opposed his freedom. At present, the Halloween Killer, now 70 years old, remains confined within the walls of a medical facility, a chilling reminder of the malevolence that can lurk behind even the most festive of nights. Gerald Turner's name is forever remembered for a sinister reason. He's known as the Halloween Killer, a chilling legacy from that fateful Halloween night in 1973. In recent years, there has been a growing controversy surrounding Halloween decorations. Critics argue that these terrifying decorations have become increasingly gory and realistic, and they believe it's time for someone to step in and curb this trend. This sentiment is somewhat connected to two disturbing incidents. The first incident took place during Halloween in 2005. A 42-year-old woman was found hanging from a tree by the side of Frederica Road in Delaware. For several hours, passing motorists believed her lifeless body was an incredibly realistic Halloween decoration. It wasn't until later that the tragic truth was revealed. A similar incident occurred in Ohio in 2015. Rebecca Cade, as seen in the picture, was brutally murdered, and her body was left bound to a fence post, with a torn piece of clothing. Pedestrians initially mistook her corpse for a Halloween decoration. It took several hours for a particularly curious passerby to approach, and realize that it is a real human corpse. Police received a tip that Donnie Cauchenour Jr. may have some information about the murder. During the investigation, police went to the home of Cauchenour's sister, Lisa Frost, in order to ask some questions. Investigators believe that on the night of Cade's murder, Cauchenour and her were in a field arguing. Cauchenour began chasing Cade when she got caught on the fence. He then began to beat Cade repeatedly with a large rock, eventually causing her to lose consciousness. She was left there for dead as Cauchenour made his way to his sister's home. When Cauchenour arrived to Frost's home, he was muddy and covered in blood. He cleaned up in her bathroom, and then Frost helped him throw his soiled clothing into a neighbor's garbage can, and cleaned up the mess in her bathroom, before driving him to a friend's house. Frost has since been sentenced to 12 months in prison for tampering with evidence. Cauchenour has also been indicted for the murder, but was determined to be mentally unfit to stand trial until September of 2016. Cauchenour is currently facing 15 years to life in prison, for his role in the murder of Rebecca Cade. These unsettling cases have added fuel to the ongoing debate about Halloween decorations. While Halloween is a time for spooky fun, it's important to strike a balance between creativity and respecting the boundaries of taste and sensitivity. As Halloween approaches each year, communities grapple with the question of how far is too far when it comes to decorating for this haunted holiday. John White, on ordinary days, was a gentle pastor in Michigan, and his congregation had no inkling that behind his unassuming appearance. It was on Halloween night in 2012 when White, armed with a wooden mallet and a zip tie, shattered the tranquility of Rebecca Gay's home. He was engaged to Gay's mother, about to become her stepfather. Rebecca Gay, a 24-year-old with a 3-year-old son, lived there with him. White was a frequent visitor, so she unsuspectingly allowed her future stepfather into her home. The moment he crossed the threshold, White used the zip tie to strangle Gay. He then repeatedly struck her head with the wooden mallet until she succumbed to her injuries. After the gruesome act, he stripped her lifeless body and dragged it into the woods behind the house. In a macabre twist, after the murder, White returned to the house, dressed Rebecca Gay's son in Halloween costume, and took the child to his father's house. It wasn't until 20 hours later that Gay's lifeless body was discovered. Before White was identified as the murderer, he even had his congregation pray for the victim's soul during his sermons. What makes this story truly horrifying is the fact that John White had been imprisoned twice before, in 1981 and 1994, for separate murder convictions. Remarkably, after his release in 2007, he became a pastor and then committed another murder. In the early hours of Halloween in 1979, a jogger out for a morning run stumbled upon a ghastly scene, the lifeless and brutally battered body of a 17-year-old girl. The victim was Shirley Ledford. Just the night before, she had been at a Halloween gathering and had chosen to hitch a ride with two strangers on her way home. A month later, law enforcement received a crucial tip that unveiled the identities of the two suspects, Roy Norris and Lawrence Bittaker. These men were local residents of Los Angeles, one an electrician and the other a machinist. Yet, the investigation into these two individuals left authorities horrified, as they uncovered disturbing evidence. Hidden away were hundreds of photographs of young women, tool-stained with blood, and chilling audio tapes that captured the screams and pleas for mercy from their victims. This pair of serial killers would go down in infamy as the Toolbox Killers. Their disturbing method involved luring young women into the back of their box-style van, with one driving while the other subjected the victims to sexual assault and ultimately murder. Shirley Ledford would become the last of their 5 known victims. She endured unimaginable torment for a harrowing 2 hours before her life was brutally extinguished by Norris, who used a coat hanger to strangle her. The Toolbox Killers did not shy away from admitting their guilt. In the eyes of the law, Lawrence Bittaker received the death penalty, while Roy Norris was sentenced to life imprisonment. That Halloween morning in 1979, when Shirley Ledford's lifeless body was found, still sends shivers down the spine, as a stark reminder of the gruesome acts committed by the Toolbox Killers during their horrifying spree.